And joining me now is the former Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir, Omar Abdullah. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Abdullah. Would you agree that this terrible attack, this sad, terrible attack that's taken place on Amarnath Pilgrims will actually act in some way as a catalyst in uniting people of Kashmir against terror? Will finally every Kashmiri politician and civil society representative unequivocally, without any buts and ifs, condemn this attack?
But I can't speak for everybody, Rajdeep. I can only speak for myself. Condemn almost and in mainstream media. It will this continue into the? Can't speak for them.
You're saying you can't speak for them, Mr. Abdullah, but the fact is that this whole notion of Kashmiriyat, which is often spoken about, you yourself spoke about it yesterday in a tweet, that this attack is against Kashmir and its ethos. The fact is that Kashmiriyat itself has been under strain for more than 2 decades, when Kashmiri Pandits were driven out, when Amarnath Pilgrims have been attacked in the past. So the whole notion of Kashmiriyat, in a way, has been under strain for a very long time.
Of course it has, but it has survived. The fact that today across religious, across political, across ideological lines, people in the state of Jammu and Kashmir have unequivocally condemned, and particularly in the valley have condemned this attack. You have civil society coming together to stage a sit-in protest today. Would suggest to you that there are still of Kashmiri that have survived this onslaught that began in 88, 89 with the targeted attacks against the Kashmiri Pandits.
But the fact is that there will be those who will say that does it require an attack on Kashmiri, on pilgrims, on Amarnath pilgrims in this matter, Hindu pilgrims, for suddenly people to wake up to the harsh reality that the gun can move, that violence of all forms has to be condemned. For much too long, there's been a sense that every attack has led to a division in society, with some suggesting that at the end of the day, the security forces are to blame, human rights violations are to blame. Those divides in the past, Mr. Abdullah, have tended to blunt the attack on terror or the campaign against terror.
No, I'm sorry. Let's not confuse the two, Rajdeep. The fact that we condemn this attack on the Amarnath Yatra doesn't mean that we're going to go silent if there are incidents of human rights violations. Why are you confusing the two? This is, I mean, it's like comparing chalk and cheese. I mean, yes, we condemn human rights violations, but that doesn't stop us from condemning this attack on the Amarnath Yatra and the killing of 7 innocent pilgrims. And the opposite is also true.
The reason I'm asking you this, Mr. Abdullah, there's a sense that there has been an attempt to rationalize violence in the past. That violence has been rationalized in the past, and that rationalization must end. Terrorists have to be isolated, and their overground backers have to be also isolated.
I have no argument with that. I can't disagree with. I mean, that's a logical statement. There is no scope for disagreement with that.
But isn't it true that in recent times we have seen a very, very sharp divide, polarization, both political and in society, on the entire issue of dealing with terror, and with the issue of dealing with stone pelters, and in dealing with those who are seen to back this kind of violence, that Kashmiri society, and indeed a growing divide between Kashmir and India or the rest of India, prevents a solution that will ensure that the terrorists are truly marginalized.
No, you see, the problem with your question, Rajdeep, is that you're taking 3 completely different things and trying to make them into one. I mean, let's deal with terrorism separately, deal with stone pelting separately, and deal with the political backers of a separatist movement separately. Let's not confuse all three of them, because look, you can't have one standard response for all this. You can't deal with stone pelters the same way you deal with terrorists. You can't deal with political separatists the same way you deal with terrorists. They all have to be dealt with. I'm not saying they don't, but you can't use the same yardstick to deal with them. That's the only point I'm making.
But when a Burhan Wani, for example, becomes a role model for a section of Kashmiris, when those who carry the gun are in a way glorified, how do you then deal with situations of the kind? That's when innocent pilgrims today find themselves in the crossfire.
Look, innocent pilgrims unfortunately have found themselves in the crossfire long before anybody had ever heard of Burhan Wani. We had an attack on Amarnath Pilgrims way back in 2000. I'm not even sure whether Burhan Wani was even alive at that point in time. So again, let's be careful how we correlate situations to what has happened today. What has happened today, or what happened yesterday, should never have happened. Cutting across strata, people in the valley have condemned and outrightly condemned it without any qualification. Now, you asked me whether this will be something that will be repeated in the future. I honestly, I'd like to say that it will be, but I mean, I can't speak for everybody. Now, as far as why people glorify violence or militancy, look, there is, I mean, it's part of a certain section of society. I think the responsibility rests on mainstream political parties like mine, like the PDP, like others, to try and minimize this constituency. But the fact is that in the last year and a half to 2 years, that constituency in the valley has grown. The challenge is now, the challenge in front of us now is to reduce the growth of that.
But if the Indian state takes tough action against such elements, will the likes of Omar Abdullah support this tough action, or will you because suddenly we have elements today who are calling for the PDP, BJP government's ouster. There are those who are saying this is a government failure and the government must be sacked. Are you calling for the sacking of Mehbooba Mufti?
No, that's a different debate altogether. Let's address the first question that you asked. Will we support tough measures? Look, as long as those tough measures are legal, they're not extra constitutional. Who in their right mind would oppose them? But I mean, when you go around tying innocent people to the fronts of jeeps, then obviously people like myself have problems with actions like that. As long as we hold ourselves to the high standards that we have traditionally maintained and espoused, I don't think anybody will have a problem with that.
But
we're not supporters of
but you must appreciate that the army.
We want a peaceful Kashmir.
You must
we want
appreciate,
a militant-free Kashmir.
No, but you must appreciate, Mr. Abdullah, that whether it's the army, whether it's the security forces, whether it's the Jammu and Kashmir police, they are facing a very difficult situation. They need all the support they can get. When they get contrarian signals from the political class, they find themselves in some way very vulnerable.
And the question here is?
And the question is that therefore I am asking whether the Jammu and Kashmir police, the army and the security forces will get the kind of political support they perhaps need to take on this horrific terror force. Many of these terrorists come from across the border, some of them are homegrown, but they need at some level...
Are you asking us to suspend our opposition to human rights violations?
No, I'm asking you, and this is where I started. Are you going to support the Mehbooba Mufti government at a moment like this, or are you going to call for a head saying there is a political vacuum, the government has failed? I'm just asking whether the army will get caught in the political crossfire.
Why should the army get caught in the political crossfire? Whether the National Conference calls into question the performance of the Mehbooba Mufti government or not has nothing to do with the army, the CRPF or the J&K police getting caught in the political crossfire. We're not targeting the army, the police or the CRPF. We are talking about the performance of the Mehbooba Mufti government.
Do you believe that she should? Do you believe she should be removed?
The BJP had no problem.
Do you believe she should be removed and a president's rule imposed after incidents like this?
I believe that I believe that the government of India needs to take a long, hard look at the deterioration in the J&K, in the situation in J&K, and particularly in the valley, after the installation of Mehbooba Mufti as Chief Minister. After that, it's for the government of India to decide what it wants to do.
But there have been terror attacks when you were in power, when the National Conference, both your father and yourself were in power. Do you believe, and at that stage you all would oppose President's rule being imposed, do you want President's rule imposed as some are demanding in the present situation?
If the continuation of Mehbooba Mufti as Chief Minister becomes untenable, as I believe it's rapidly approaching that point, there may not be another option. And please remember, Rajdeep, you have not had attacks of this nature since 2000. You have had Mufti Sayyid as Chief Minister after that. You've had Ghulam Nabi Azad as Chief Minister. You've had 6 years of my government and then Mufti Sayyid after that again. And you haven't seen an attack of this nature in all these years.
No, hold on. There have been terror attacks.
You're making it sound as if an attack on Amarnath Yatris is a regular occurrence that has happened time and again.
No, I'm not saying that the attack on Amarnath Yatris is a regular occurrence. That was last in 2000, but there have been other terror attacks. I'm just wondering, is this, how do you explain this upsurge in terrorist violence? How do you explain it?
Well, the simplest way to explain it is the failure of the experiment of the BJP and the PDP coming together. There is a clear correlation between the coming together of the PDP, BJP and the deterioration of the law and order and security environment in Jammu and Kashmir. It isn't rocket science to correlate that. Now, is the solution the removal of Mehbooba Mufti or not? That's a call government of India has to take.
No, but you seem to be suggesting in this interview that you believe that the stage that the state is inching towards President's rule. That's what you seem to be suggesting in this interview, that the state is inching towards President's rule. Do you really believe terrorism will stop?
I have seen
Do you really believe terrorism will stop with President's rule?
Few months.
Do you really believe you can stop terrorists? These are homegrown terrorists. These are terrorists being sponsored by Pakistan. Do you really believe, Omar Abdullah, that these terrorists would stop their operations simply because President's rule would be imposed?
This is a far longer.
Okay, we're going to try and go back to Omar Abdullah, because remember, at the moment, he is our key newsmaker. There is some problem that we've had every now and then with that line. We'll just take a quick break and try and go back to that special interview with Omar Abdullah. Come back. Let's go back to Omar Abdullah, who's still with us. Omar Abdullah, you know, one of the fears is that this Amarnath Yatra will divide Hindus and Muslims both within the valley and beyond. Is that a fear that you have, that Jammu and Kashmir will be even more sharply divided between Jammu and the valley, and the divide between Kashmir and the rest of India will grow? Is that a real fear?
See, as long as reasonable and responsible people like the Home Minister, Rajnath Singh ji, continue to sort of play the statesman-like role that they have been doing, I think the fears that we have of a wider divide, between the valley and Jammu, or between Hindus and Muslims, I think those fears will prove to be unfounded. So long as political parties and groups don't try to fan the flames, and the more reasonable, the more mature, responsible voices like Rajnath Singh ji's are the voices that are heard, I think those fears will be unfounded.
Will Kashmiri politicians fan the flames, or have Kashmiri politicians who in the past have advocated some form of violence also got marginalized? Interestingly, top separatist leaders like Sayyid Ali Shah Gilani, Umar Farooq, Yasin Malik today have expressed deep sorrow and grief over the killing. Am I to understand in that sense this is some kind of a turning point, that those who have in some way flirted with the militants have also realized there are limits to this kind of flirtation?
I can't speak for them, Rajdeep. The fact that they've condemned it this time, does that mean they'll condemn future attacks as well? I don't know. I can only speak for myself. I have never been a supporter of terror and violence, and God forbid I ever support terror or violence for any reason whatsoever.
what is your message in a way to the center, to the Narendra Modi government? P. Chidambaram being out of our control. Do you believe these are exaggerated fears and the time has come for maybe some innovative ways forward in which the gap between Delhi and Srinagar can be bridged? What would your advice be to the Prime Minister and the centre?
We have an open channel of communication with the centre. I've had periodic interactions with the Home Minister. My father has met the Prime Minister. It's not in our nature to provide advice over television channels. Whatever we have to say, whatever we've said in the past, whatever we need to say in the future, we will say when we meet them. I think all of us are concerned about the way Jammu and Kashmir is slipping out of our hands, particularly the valley. The corrective steps that need to be taken, we'll discuss with them.
So what's in your view, how is this cycle of violence going to end? With groups like the Lashkar, which are funded from across the border, how is this cycle of violence going to end? That's what everyone is worried about, that this cycle of violence now seems to, in every summer in particular, spiral out of control.
I'm less concerned about the Lashkar. I'm less concerned about the Lashkar-e-Toiba because the tighter we are along the line of control, the less able they are to infiltrate into the valley and create trouble. My fear, and this has been something I've talked about for the last more than a year, is the growing numbers of local youth that are being recruited into militant organizations. If the intelligence reports are correct, and I only have social media to rely on in that respect, the number of militants operating in South Kashmir alone is in the region of 300 to 350. Now, this is an alarming number by any stretch of, by any means that you want to assess it by. And that, to my mind, is what we should be looking at. How do we stem this growing tide of youngsters that suddenly find the ranks of militancy such an attractive option?
How would you respond to those who say that these youngsters have lost faith in their political leadership? Now, whether that be the previous leadership of the National Conference or today the PDP in the valley, people have lost faith in their politicians.
I would agree with them. I would absolutely agree with them. It's obviously because mainstream political space has shrunk. Mainstream political ideology seems less attractive to them. That they've slipped, and unfortunately, even the peaceful separatist platform is no longer appealing to them. It's not as if just the National Conference or the PDP is no longer an attractive option. Even the Hurriyat Conference isn't an attractive option for them. They're going the whole hog to pick up a gun, which is, I mean, looking for a violent solution rather than a political one. So
that's a
mainstream
major
political parties like mine need to introspect, and we are doing. But similarly, even the political separatist leadership needs to introspect that youngsters who otherwise might have been happy to join their rallies are actually now more interested in picking up the gun and espousing a violent solution rather than a non-violent one.
That's a big confession to make. You're virtually confessing to your failure and that of the entire political class in Jammu and Kashmir, stretching back, some would say, to your father, and even beyond that, that you all have failed to address the issues. And today we find ourselves in a situation where terrorists can kill innocent pilgrims and get away perhaps with it. So in a sense, you are acknowledging, importantly, the failure of the political class.
Rajit, the failure, no, hang on. Yeah, I mean, the failure has been across the board, and the failure hasn't been limited just to the political parties in Jammu and Kashmir. I'm sorry, but successive central governments have failed as well. I mean, if we let's be honest, if we hadn't failed, you think we'd be where we are today? We have failed as a political class. We have failed as civil society. State governments and central governments have failed. It's why Kashmir is in the mess that it's in today. I mean, obviously we have to have failed that the state is on fire. If we hadn't failed, it wouldn't be in the state that it's in. So, I mean, there's no point beating around the bush and denying facts. That's the way it is. Now, who has failed to what extent? That is something that is open to debate, and history will judge us in due course.
Let me therefore end, though, on a more positive note. As you said, civil society groups today have got together, are trying to, in a sense, condemn the violence that has taken place against these innocent Hindu pilgrims. You've got civil society groups across, even in Delhi, who have taken up the Not in My Name protest this time against this terror attack. Do you believe that an inflection point can come where civil society in Kashmir will stand up and say enough is enough?
Inshallah, I hope so. I hope so, because we really need to look at where we have taken the state of Jammu and Kashmir, where we are now, and if we don't pull back from the abyss now, future generations will never forgive us.
I just want to, Omar, ask you, you may want to, if there are any family members of Amarnath Pilgrims, there are those who are calling for the yatra to be stopped. Do you believe that the yatra should be stopped, or do you believe that would be an acknowledgement of defeat?
Absolutely not.
So the yatra should go ahead.
No, it's not just an acknowledgement of defeat. That aside, I mean, this yatra is a symbol of everything that is good about this country, everything that is good about the understanding between religions. I mean, the cave was discovered by a Muslim. The yatra takes place with the support of the majority community of Jammu and Kashmir state. It is an excellent example of tolerance and understanding. I know of Muslims that have been to Amarnath cave to pay homage. So yes, this has been a huge setback, and I can't offer more strongly my condolences to the families of those who have lost their lives. But to call off the yatra or to cancel it would be to play into the hands and to allow those forces to succeed that carried out this dastardly attack yesterday.
I think that's well put, Omar Abdullah, and as you said, this yatra has been a symbol in many ways of a unique culture which had composite culture, some would say, that certainly existed at one time in the valley and hopefully exists even today, and that culture is what needs to be recaptured and terrorism needs to be isolated. Omar Abdullah, you've been very candid, you've spoken from your heart. Thank you very much for joining me.